Going live now.
Oh, 1 second. Let me get to YouTube.
Shalom, my brothers and sisters. Shalom. Giving honor to He who created all things. Honor to the Most High, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This particular presentation, we do not intend, as in the other ones, for it to be long. I apologize for two things. One, the postponement of the Hebrew class, normally scheduled for 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. For it to be another day, we are aiming for it to be tomorrow. And apologizing for the situation that happened and while we're doing this matter right here. It has been, brothers and sisters, some time, approximately over 5 years, since I've been doing presentations on YouTube. And as time's going on, we began to see that it has increased, it has had problems, it has been beneficial, and so forth. What we are going to do in this particular presentation, brothers and sisters, is go over the fact of the biblical timeline so that way we can gain some understanding in this kind of matter. Now, in part, the purpose is due to the fact that, as we know, a lot of ancient records don't have dates that we're used to seeing today. So we want to point out what dating system they used and understanding biblical matters, how we're able to make moves in such cases. Giving honor and praise unto the Most High, without any further ado, let us get into this particular matter and presentation. Thank you. All right, Old Testament timeline. We have, brothers and sisters, creation. Call of Abraham. The Exodus. Entrance into Canaan. Conquest completed. Israel's monarchy begins. Division of the kingdom. Fall of the northern kingdom. Fall of the southern kingdom. Restoration of the land. End of the Old Testament. Brothers and sisters, the dating system that we see here as BCE, before the Common Era, is predicated upon a counting system going backward. So let's use this as an example. 800 BCE in timeline is before 700 BCE. Now, while all of these events have occurred in what we understand as the said Old Testament, the dating is some of the closest that a brother was able to sit there and find according to the timeline itself. One of the pinnacle marks is the Exodus. Another pinnacle mark, brothers and sisters, is the timing of Solomon. The Torah says, when you go into the land and when the Most High gives you peace from all your enemies round about, The word Solomon in Hebrew is Shalomo, which means peacefulness. So, one of the things to be pointed out in that particular case is the fact that people were named or bear the name or carried the name or was in certain cases additionally named based upon events that happened. Solomon began to reign according to timeline in the 11th century BCE, 1016, 1012, 1010 or so BCE. If he began to reign in 1016 BCE, and it says in the 4th year of his reign is when he began to build the house, that would mean in timeline, that would be, brothers and sisters, 1012. If that event occurred 480 years after the Exodus, shy of 20 years of 500 years, or shy of 200 years of half a millennium, that would give you, brothers and sisters, 1492 BCE. Now, the Egyptian timeline table has it to where a lot of the kings lists are mentioned. And I pointed this out in the book From Assyria to America for those who are interested, but that's a whole nother subject with purchasing things on that matter. Now, getting back into the realm of Shabbat thought and not doing salesmanship, if we will. The timeline of the Egyptians does not always have all of their kings. Just the same, in the biblical record, there was a king that ruled before David and after Saul named Ishbosheth. There was another king that ruled only 7 days by the name of Zimri. You understand? And so just like America in their presidency, you don't ever see Alexander Stephens or Jefferson Davis in the list of presidents, who was the president of the Confederacy and his vice president. Just the same, even in the scriptures, you don't see Ishbosheth ruling when you go into Chronicles as far as the list of kings, when you go into Chronicles chapter 3. So Israel wanting a king like the nations had only one positive effect, and that is, and it's a small positive effect, and that is they began to be recognized by other nations. Outside of that, everything else about getting a king for the house of Israel was negative. So, brothers and sisters, looking upon this particular matter, we want to point this out for reasonable purposes. Now, you might see people in the comments saying things such as Shana Toba. Now, this as Israelites is our new year. Not because it's quote April or April Fools, but because of the Moed or the season. This is the season when things come into life. In most cases, and throughout the length and breadth of the earth. Our new year doesn't start in the quote dead of winter when things are dead. It starts in the month of Abib, and as pointed out last night in the presentation, the word Abib means sprouting forth or greenery from the Hebrew verb ibabe, okay? So we just want to point that out for reasonable purposes. On the human level, giving a shout out to my lady, Sarah Michaela Yisrael, giving a shout out to the brother Captain Yehu, giving a shout out to Looking Up in JA. Thank you all for being inside of the comments and leaving a comment. All right, this is being Tanakh based, Old Testament based. This is going to be primarily focused on the timeline of the Old Testament and what we can gather from therein. Short matter of biblical timeline. We want to point out that the Bible's dates are based on what is called a Regnu dating system. Now, brothers and sisters, I want to take out this time now, if we will, all right, and look at this right here, highlighter, all right, and show that right there. Regnu dating, brothers and sisters, is not according to 1988, this date, at this time, at this PM or AM or something like that. So a lot of times people will say, well, the Bible has absolutely no date, so how can it be a history book? It's the same way the Egyptian papyrus is the timeline when you go into the Saqqara list or the Abydos list. It's the same way when you read about the kings of Ethiopia, and it doesn't have the timeline such as 1988, 1492, and so forth and so on. So the concept or understanding, excuse me, of saying that the Bible is not a history book because it doesn't, quote, have any dates, while forgetting what a regnal dating system is. You may have never known, perhaps, that the Egyptians used a regnal dating, Sumeria used a regnal dating, Persia used a regnal dating. Different nations of antiquity use a regnal dating in the year of this king such and such. Let's look at that. A regnal year is the official year of a reign dating from the king's ascension. These are usually calendar years. A co-regency is a period of time when two kings are reigning at the same time. Did you know in the Bible you had King Jotham as well as his father Uzziah ruling at the same time? Did you know, brothers and sisters, that inside of the Egyptian era, you happen to have Mentuhotep IV of Dynasty 11, as well as Amenemhat I of Dynasty 12 ruling at the same time? So we want to understand what is a regnal dating system, as well as, brothers and sisters, what is a co-regency matter. All of these kind of terminologies are important when dealing with this kind of subject. An interregnum is a period of time in which there was no king reigning. So now, brothers and sisters, looking at it like this, we have to know that, as it says in the end of the book of Judges, there was no king in Israel, and everyone did what was right in his own eyes. So the author of the book of Judges that we have on record is letting us know that he's living in the time of the kings or the time after when the kings are no longer ruling. The last king of Israel was Hoshea, which we're going to talk about. The last king of Judah was Zedekiah. So now, when you go, for instance, in Isaiah chapter 9, when it says the government is upon his shoulder, after Assyria defeated the northern kingdom of Israel, King Hezekiah, by default, the son of Ahaz, would have been the ruler of Israel as a whole. Because what Assyria did in 722, which we're going to point out right here, if you look, brothers and sisters, at with the pen, right? When it says about the period of the kings, and what you're about to see getting circled in the red, 722, that era right there in the 8th century BCE is when Israel as a kingdom fell. But yet there was still Israelites that was ruling. Pardon me, there were still Israelites of the northern kingdom that were living in their still lands. Case in point, Ahaz is the father of Hezekiah. Hezekiah, king of Judah, sent messengers to people such as Zebulun and Manasseh in 2 Chronicles 30 for them to keep Passover. You understand? So, brothers and sisters, when we begin to sit there and see certain things like that, the kingdom of Israel fell. But brothers and sisters, the Israelites in many cases were still living in their lands even after the kingdom fell. So this is something, brothers and sisters, we want to point out for reference purposes. The author, Sir Alan Gardiner, spoke of this too in his book concerning the Egyptians. All right? So they were matters of interregnum, when there was no king ruling, co-regencies, when you had two kings ruling at the same time, and a matter, brothers and sisters, of regnal dating. So we can't look at ancient records, all right, say before the era of Justinian of Europe, you understand, and then expect to get the same timeline like in the year 1742, approximately at 9 a.m. That you're not going to get that in that time frame, all right? So it doesn't mean that it didn't exist. It's just the time frame in counting and what method was used to count a calendar was different, depends upon the society that we're speaking of. Next slide. Jonah in the book of Kings. It says this: He restored the border of Israel from the entrance of Hamath unto the sea of the Arabah, according to the word of Yah, the God of Israel, which he spoke by the hand of his servant Jonah, the son of Amittai, the prophet, who was of Gath Hefer. Now, this is the same Jonah who was sent to go to Assyria, but instead he wound up trying to go to Tarshish that we spoke about on this channel about 2 weeks ago. Jonah was not only a prophet sent there, but he was also, as we see here, brothers and sisters, when you go into the book of Kings, chapter 14, you'll see where this citation is at. All right. So he's also a prophet that was sent to the house of Israel. So let's go on in this particular case, because we're going to see that the timeline of a prophet and the timeline of the kings was intermeshed to get an Israelite calendar once they became under a monarchy. Now, monarchy, brothers and sisters, is when a government is ruled or a people are ruled by a said king. A democracy is when they have it to where, like in America, you go and vote. And democracy, or those of the democratic, actually means the rule of the mob. That's what it really means. Democracy means government. All right. It literally means the rule of the mob. That's what democracy is. All right. So you have different types of factions of government. The way the Torah had it to where Israel was going to be ruled under a theocracy. Theocracy, for the lack of a better term, is to say that your government and your kingdom is ruled by God. But Israel eventually wanted to have a man on the throne so they can sit there and say that this king led me astray, or this king was this, or this king was that. You wanted to shift the responsibility from yourself and become, quote, not different, but blend in like a chameleon, saying, oh, well, we're going to be all together like that, like the other nations. The other nations then experience what Israel experienced. So we got to know where our place is at. Next slide, please. The matter with Isaiah in Kings. It says this: the vision of Isaiah, the son of Amos, which he saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem in the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah. That's in Isaiah chapter 1, verse 1. Now, brothers and sisters, what do we care to point out, all right, with the highlighter? All right? Kings of Judah. Regnal is of when one is a king that's ruling. That's how that calendar is counted. So Isaiah wouldn't say, I began to prophesy in the 8th century BCE. You're not going to find that in his book. You're going to find a list of kings that lived during the era of his prophetic status. So these are things we want to point out with that. Goes on to say in Isaiah chapter 20, in the year that Tartan came unto Ashdod, when Sargon, king of Assyria, sent him, and he fought against Ashdod and took it. Now, this is when linguistics come into understanding, and etymology and the study of languages comes into understanding, and so forth. Tartan is a title. It's an Assyrian title, meaning one who rules. So these are things we want to point out. Just as much as when you go in the Bible in the book of 2 Kings 17, and it says, So, the king of Egypt. Some of the people into the Kemetic community try to say that the Bible is off because there was no pharaoh by the name of So, but there was in Hebraic thought. He was called Shabaka of Dynasty 25 of Egypt. So these are things we, brothers and sisters, want to point out once it comes down to people renaming things according to their own language, a certain matter. You understand? So now, get some notes on the right-hand side, and it says this: Isaiah began to prophesy in the era of the 8th century BCE. Isaiah spoke mostly of the southern kingdom of Judah, but also spoke of the northern kingdom of Israel. The kingdom of Israel fell during the reign of Ahaz of Judah. Hezekiah of Judah is mentioned by the Assyrian king Sennacherib. Now, what do we want to point out real quick with this? It says Hezekiah of Judah, right? Here in Isaiah chapter 1, we just mentioned Hezekiah by name. Now I'm going to take the liberty, brothers and sisters, after saying that he was mentioned by the Assyrian king, and show what we're talking about when he was mentioned by the Assyrian king Sennacherib, this being Hezekiah of Judah. And this is what he says of Hezekiah as recorded. As for Hezekiah of Judah, who did not submit to my yoke, 46 of his strong walled cities, as well as innumerable small cities in their neighborhood, I besieged with scaling ladders, siege engines, infantry, breaches, mines, and tunneling, and I conquered them. Those of the cities which I have plundered, I cut from his land and diminished his land. I increased his former tribute and exacted a yearly tax in acknowledgement of my sovereignty. A yearly tax. Did you know when you're paying, as we pay, be it tax, mortgage, or rent, that is a sign of being besieged? What happens when, heaven forbid, you don't pay your taxes? What happens, heaven forbid, when you don't pay your rent? What happens, heaven forbid, when you don't pay your mortgage? They seize it from you. Well, brothers and sisters, a tax that was laid upon Hezekiah, if he did not pay it, he was going to get besieged. We know later on in the era of Zedekiah, when he refused to pay the king of Babylon, Jerusalem was destroyed. So being taxed is not a good thing. Even though many people say, I pay my taxes, that's a sign that we have been plundered, even in the ancient world or the modern world. All right? But as for Hezekiah, he was intimidated by the splendor of my power and the urbi, meaning the might of, and his best mercenary troops, which he had brought in to strengthen his royal city of Jerusalem, deserted him in terror. So right here, in what they call the Hezekiah Prism, this is located, brothers and sisters, inside of History Matters. And in such, brothers and sisters, we know good and well what was being going on. It was a text document for all intents and purposes. Okay? So, brothers and sisters, bear with me 1 second, please. Thank you so much. One second, family. Thank you. Shalom, brothers and sisters. We're going to continue on. Thank you for that. Sorry about that. From where we were just speaking upon in the matter of this. All right. So I just wanted to go over and show what we was talking about when I mentioned that Hezekiah of Judah was mentioned by the king, brothers and sisters, Sennacherib. Sennacherib was also a king who made war with the Egyptians. All right. For those who know the history in that particular matter, if we will. All right. As the brother Captain Yehu pointed out, nothing new under the sun. Shout out to the brother Uziel Yisrael. Shalom, my brother. Shabbat shalom to you. Hey, I want to ask a question. Sidebar. I want to ask this question, and I'm going to type it in for the family. All right. Why do we say Shabbat shalom and not Shabbat tov? That's a question. This is sidebar. So please, if you wanted to join me in this little conversation sidebar, that's not a problem. You understand? I can add you on if you send me your email or whatever like that, maybe in the future. But this is something maybe we could type right now. Why? This is sidebar. Why do we say Shabbat Shalom and not Shabbat Tov? Now, I'm going to jump on the limb and say we all know that the word Tov means what? Good, right? Tov means good. Now, we know the Shabbat is a day. So should we or can we say, without being wrong, saying Shabbat Tov? Now we know shalom is nothing wrong with it. The word shalom from shalom means to be complete. So shalom means completeness, if we will. Sabbath of peace, Sabbath of completeness. But here's a question I'm asking on the sidebar. Not that it's even a legitimate question, maybe, but just a question that asks this. Why do we as Israel, and I say it and I won't stop saying it, but why do we always say Shabbat Shalom and not Shabbat Tov? Just asking this on a whim, all right? Kind of sidebar, if we will, all right? But we can, brothers and sisters, all right, get back into this presentation here so we can have maybe this presentation going on and maybe a conversation inside the chat and so on, all right? Let's go on. The matter with Jeremiah and Kings. The words of Jeremiah, the son of Hezekiah, of the priests that were in Anatot in the land of Benjamin, to whom the word of Yah came in the days of Josiah, the son of Ammon, king of Judah, in the 13th year of his reign. It came also in the days of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, unto the end of the 11th year of Zedekiah, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, unto the carrying away of Jerusalem captive in the 5th month. All right, let's look at that. If I can be heard, give me a 1, please. Brothers and sisters, if I can be heard, please in the chat tap in or state a 1. Thank you. Somebody stated, never really thought about it outside of the Jews saying good Shabbos, but it can be applied to Shabbat Tov. Okay. Cain, what I'm trying to say, my brother Yehu, Captain, is it's not a right or wrong thing to say Shabbat Tov or Shabbat Shalom, but I'm just wondering if Shabbat is a day, why have we for decades never really tried to say Shabbat Tov, good Sabbath, which we all know good and peace is all tranquil, is all synonymous, but just wanted to throw that question out there. All right. Thank you for the people who had typed in 1. All right. Thank you for that for understanding purposes. Getting back to this, and please do feel free to speak into the comment section or whatever like that. All right. The words of Jeremiah, the son of Hezekiah, of the priest. Now, Jeremiah was a Levite of the house of Aaron, and he was not a grown man when he began to prophesy. Right? It tells you where he's from in birth. And it says too, brothers and sisters, the word of Yah came in the days of Josiah, the son of Ammon. That's the king of Judah in the 13th year of his reign. So, brothers and sisters, when we go back to here, a regnal year is the official year of a reign dating from the king's ascension. So now when we go back into Jeremiah chapter 1, and it speaks upon the dating here from the 13th year of when Josiah began to reign. So Josiah began to reign according to the timeline in 640 BCE. 640 BCE is the 7th century BCE. So 13 years after that, you get 626, 627 BCE, depending upon what month we're dealing with. Looking at that is when you could begin to have a timeline of when these things begin to happen. So when people ask the question, well, how come the Bible has absolutely no dates? Maybe you forgot or did not know what a regnal dating system is. But I say this in no disrespect. It's usually the said, quote unquote, conscious community who try to say things like that. While we calling ourselves peace king, peace queen, we calling ourselves royalty, but yet we think our dating system is going to be according to theirs. No, Israel. No, my brother. No, my sister. So these are things we want to point out for reference purposes. All right. Then it goes on to say, this being in the time frame of the 7th into the 6th century BCE. During this time, we notice the rise of Babylon as an empire and the fall of Syria as one. Babylon and Assyria had issues one with another, for those who are familiar with that particular history. I have a book here. All right. Now, my lady, she kind of at times snaps on me making jokes, saying I'm like into the Assyrians, things like that. But there is something that I want to read concerning this here, because this correlates, brothers and sisters, with the time frame that we're reading of in the Bible. All right. And it says in chapter 8 of this book here, Syrian Empire, written by an organization called Hourly History. And it says this: While Assyria was being weakened further by another civil war, many of the states which had previously been under its control took the opportunity to become independent. What do we want to point out? Assyria was ruling in different parts of the world. When Assyria had internal problems, the people that was under Assyria's rule gained independence. Did you know that the Maroons in Jamaica began to fight against the Spanish and the British when Jamaica was being transformed from Spanish occupation rule to British, because the Spanish had Jamaica since 1509, and then the British came in 1655. The Maroons of Jamaica, when they saw the enslavers fighting against each other, they took that opportunity to revolt. That's called intelligence. Did you know, brothers and sisters, during the era of Napoleon and during the era when they was killing the King of France, King Louis, brothers and sisters, the 16th, that is when the people under the overture and later on in Haiti with Dessalines rose up and gained their freedom. These are things we want to point out for edification purposes. When your oppressors begin to go against each other, that's the time to strike. When it says concerning a portion that Isaac gave Esau, when in so many words, when Israel goes off is when Edom will become independent. What was Isaac telling his son Esau? Esau, you will live by your sword. And in the time when Jacob goes off, in other words, when the children of Israel have problems, like the civil war, say with Jeroboam and Rehoboam, that is when you're going to see your independence under the yoke of the house of Israel. When the northern and southern kingdom had issues, because remember, Moab was under the rulership of the Israelites since the era of David, all the way down to the time of King Jehoram. So Moab was under the dictatorship of the Israelites for over 200 years in the biblical timeline. As soon as Israel had issues with each other, Moab got independent, Edom got independent, and these are things we want to point out, regardless of who the people are. Internal strife causes you to lose what you have gained. I state again, internal strife causes you to lose what you have gained. Children who have both parents in the house, when they see the mother and father at odds, that's the time to strike to ask, can I get something? They probably say no to. It's called being strategic. So these are things, brothers and sisters, we want to point out for edification purposes. It goes on to say in this book here, citing an external source, oh, the Israelites only cite the Bible. You're wrong. It goes on to say in here, in 625 BCE, a Chaldean, Nabopolassar, became king of Babylon following an uprising there. He declared Babylon to be independent of Assyria. And since Shah-Ishkun was forced to raise, which was one of the kings, was forced to raise an army and march on Babylon. Brothers and sisters, Assyria fell between 612 and 609 BCE. But the internal is what caused it to fall. Rome fell because of the internal matter. Brothers and sisters, not too long ago, a famous drug dealer in New York was killed. His name was in the street Alpo. Do you know that the people he was doing that illegal activity with said that they fell internally? This one snitched on this one. This one wound up hurting this one. Anything that falls from the internal side. When you pass away, no matter how you pass away, your heart stops. It's internal that causes you to fall. Once you get right down into it, brothers and sisters. So me and my lady was talking, and she's big on health, and I respect the Most High for having her in my life to put me on to a lot of health matters and so forth and so on. And she was telling me that your physical hair on the top of your head is showing you what your gut is showing you inside of your system. Now, we're getting into Abib, and we're getting into the matter with Passover coming up. You get your protein with the lamb, you get your bitter herbs, and brothers and sisters, you get the matzah, unleavened bread, the bitter herbs, and your protein from the lamb. That is a great diet. Did you know that they say that is the healthiest diet on the earth? Did you know, brothers and sisters, that the oil, the olive oil beaten small, that they used to make someone anointed in ancient days, mixed in with the myrrh, is the same recipe that they tell AIDS people to get in order to fix their liver? Because AIDS is not truly determined until your liver really drops out and really doesn't work no more. I state again, the same instruments and the same recipe, for the lack of a better word, recipe that is used, brothers and sisters, with the olive oil and the other things such as the myrrh and the things that's used in a matter of the anointing oil, is the same thing that doctors would tell you to use to get rid of AIDS in your system. Don't tell me about anybody's pyramid text when the Torah got a solution like that. So these things, brothers and sisters, we want to point out for edification purposes. Circumcision done on the 8th day of a male's life is the same time when a male has the most vitamin K in his body. Vitamin K, for those who know their vitamins, produces blood clotting. In a male's life, you will never have as much vitamin K in your system except on the 8th day of your birth. So when you're 38, 48, 58, and 68, and when you're 6 days old, vitamin K is not as strong in your system until and only on the 8th day. Don't tell me that there is no Elohim that created the heavens and the earth and everything that comes from it. So circumcision is done in Yisrael's culture on the 8th day. Vitamin K, for those who do know, produces blood clotting. Can you see the wisdom in that particular case? Correct me if I'm wrong. The time frame in which a woman develops breast milk is the time in which she's pregnant due to the hormones that the baby gives forth. Do you know they say that breast milk is healthier than any other milk on the earth? Brothers and sisters, we come from a master creator, or as they stated in the camps, the supreme intelligence of the universe. So never do we want to shortchange or think anything small of the Torah or anything of that coming from the Most High. So while a lot of times Israelites in some cases don't focus heavily on the body, the health, and things of that nature, we do it because the Lord tells us to do it. This Torah portion, brothers and sisters, that covered Leviticus chapter 11, everything that the children of Israel was told to eat, or that they could eat, in certain cases commanded to eat, are animals that are not animals of prey of other animals. The deer does not hunt for other animals. Correct me if I'm wrong. The alligator does, but we're not supposed to eat the tiny neem. The lion does, but we're not supposed to eat the ari, which is lion in Hebrew, or labi, which is another word for lion. The arbe, the locust, we can't eat. It does not attack upon said other animals. The children of Israel in the diet given in Leviticus 11, brothers and sisters, does not include animals that attack other animals for food. So we don't eat that goes on ha'arba, the four, and that have paws that go on all fours. So we don't do that. The canine and the feline, we don't do that. The diet of the house of Israel, if it is practiced, does not lead, due to diet, to cancer. The Most High didn't give you nothing to make your teeth not be well. The Most High did not give you anything like, and I'm going to go there and say it, like soda. Soda is a 4-letter word, brothers and sisters. In Israel, I say this as a brother who studies the Hebrew. There is no Hebrew word for soda. Gazos, like a lot of Israelites, gazos is the word for soda. No, it's not. Gazos is a soda-making European Jew company in the state of Israel. That's not a Hebrew word. Say gazos to Jeremiah or Hezekiah and see like, what mazeh? What's that? You understand? I respect the Most High for having a lady in my life because I don't even drink stuff like I used to drink. But we want to have not the heart as the brother I spoke with. I'm going to shout his name out in due respect. I spoke for a good while this past week to the brother from Hashaba, Kohen Sheikh Miyah. You don't want to have that heart like Pharaoh had, the hardened heart. Akshe Itlibo, I will harden his heart. That Pharaoh already had the heart to be hardened. Not that Elohim couldn't do it regardless of that. But Moses, you defended your people. I'm going to set you up. This Pharaoh already has a stubborn heart. I'm going to work with you to get my signs and my wonders to be multiplied in this earth. That Pharaoh's hardened heart costed him his son. You don't want that. It costed him his army. You don't want that. Now, historically, not to jump the gun, and I'm not playing salesman on the Shabbat, brothers and sisters, that Pharaoh I'm teaching in history was Neferhotep I of Dynasty 13. His brother, not his son, ruled after him. His son was Ha'ankef. Ha'ankef did not take the throne after his father, Neferhotep. His brother named Sihathor did. So what happened to his son? How come he didn't have his son to go up in the name of their Egyptian god, quote unquote Horus, to sit there and say, this will be the next one? Because Yah came through in that dynasty. So Horus or Heru could not do nothing against the God of the Hebrews. That hardened heart costed his army and then later on the Hyksos, who were the Amalekites, to be able to ransack Egypt. See what happens when you have the hardened heart. It costs you a lot. We don't want that. You lost a lot with that. Can't nobody tell me. That's just me right here. Ain't nobody gonna tell me what? That spirit? No, baby. That is not going to get you far in this earth. Did you know, and I'm going to say this, we're going to talk as family, right? And I think the people who are in the comments and so forth, we're going to talk as family. I was late to a class that I was supposed to have been early to or on time to. And with my left hand by accident, I did what's called decking somebody or accidentally punching him in his eye when I was turning around. I was in junior high school at the time. And this dude wasn't one to go to class, not to shame another black brother. He was one that wasn't, I'm going to be there early with my pencil and paper. No, not this guy. I accidentally punched him in his eye when I was turning around to go. Instead of going into the class, I was turning around from the class and I accidentally hit him. His words to me is something I'm not going to say on this channel and on the Shabbat. I'm going to bleep, bleep you up. That's what he said to me as he ran down the hall. So I didn't go into the class. His boys come to the door doing this with their fists. If you're able to see me, like, I'm going to see you later. I'm going to see you when that bell rings. And I'm there already knowing who Elohim is. I busted a prayer out before the Most High. When the class ended, his friend, or right before the class ended or so then, his friend that was in the class was like, yo, if he's going to do what he's going to do, he's going to do what he's going to do. This dude who I accidentally hit in his eye got his boys and waited for me by the door for when the class ended. By that time when the class ended, I had already in my heart, and I did say verbally a prayer to the Most High. When the class ended and I got up, his boys were gone. I don't know where his boys went. I don't know where his crew went. The only one who was still there was the guy who I accidentally hit. And this is my word on the Shabbat. This is the truth. This is not an ad-lib or creator story or something like that. This actually happened in the school when I was in junior high school. I looked at him, he looked at me, and I said, I apologize for what happened. And I named the person who I was turning around to go see. And he said, yeah, I know who you're talking about. And I wasn't even going to see the person to fight or big drama or beef or nothing like that. You understand? he said to me, being one of the, quote, roughnecks of the school, he said to me, "Nah, it's all good. Just be careful." And then he went on his way. There was no bloodshed. No one got detention. No one got into a fight. Nobody got suspended. Nobody got expelled. His boys wasn't even there. And so I'm using that as an example that if I, even though I made an accident, if I came out there like, "Yo, son, then what up, my nigga?" Who knows what would have happened if I had that attitude. Case in point, giving glory to the Most High about having a humble attitude without thinking you being pumped about a matter. I'm on, and I'm going to name it, for those who do know Queens, the Q85 bus. Now, everybody knows these buses in New York City are not the biggest, the public buses. And everyone who knows me, like my lady, a brother's coming with a big book bag with many books. So here I am on a crowded bus, rush hour, going to Parsons and Archer to get to the E train, those who know Queens in New York City pretty well. I'm there, excuse me. And I'm there. Wisdom says, take your book bag off and put it on the floor so there's more space. What do my unwise self do? I keep that big luggage bag type of thing like I'm going hiking. You understand? And I kept it on. This brother was trying to get past. And he bumped my bag. And he said, "Hey, yo, man, move your bag, man. It's too big." And I just turned around and I said, "My bad, brother. I apologize." And I took my bag down. Now, when we get off the bus, he's walking to the train ahead of me. He's ahead of me walking to the train. Now, if I was wicked, a brother can sit there and be the set-off person, run up behind and do this or that. That's not what the Most High had me sit under my teachers to be taught to do. That's how the Assyrians moved to Israel. I'm not an Assyrian going against my brother. You understand? So he waited right before the entrance to the staircase. And when he saw me, he raised his hand as if to give me a dap, like a clap, like hand to hand, like giving a five or something like that. He was like, "Nah, my bad, brother. I mean to come out to you." Like he said, brother. He didn't even say the N-word, like my N-word. He said, brother. The man said brother when the N-word was popular still among us as a people. He said, "I didn't mean to come at you like that, my brother." I said, "Bruh, it was my fault. I should have took my bag down. Have a blessed day." Now, had it gone different, right at Parsons and Archer, the police is there. From there to Sutphen. Other people are there. My friends may have been around, I don't know. His friends may have been around, I don't know. And what if neither one of us know that our friends could have been friends? See what would have happened if the hardened heart would have gotten there? You probably could have caught a beat down or got arrested over something just because you got the hardened heart. So learn from Pharaoh Neferhotep. Don't be the one to have the hardened heart and lose things. Relationships fall when lack of humility, be it friendship, parents and children, children and parents, men and women, women and men, sisters and sisters, brothers and brothers. We don't want that when the Most High said, "Gather yourselves together." So if you ain't getting nothing out this lesson and we ain't finished yet with the history and the timeline, humility is always better than being right. I want to state that again. Humility is more important than being right. Because it says in Proverbs, even the fool, when he keeps his peace, is wise. That's what we need to understand as the house of Israel. You understand? Getting back into this presentation here, if we will, brothers and sisters. Right? Jeremiah. Matter of fact, let's go back here, if we will. Isaiah. The Assyrians came in the era of Isaiah and destroyed the northern kingdom. Not the people, but the kingdom itself, right? In Isaiah chapter 10, the Most High said, "I send Assyria against an ungodly people." The God of Israel claimed to be the one, and I use the word claim, not trying to be disrespectful. He laid claim and took responsibility for being the one sending the Assyrians. See, it's not like the records of other nations and their gods. "Oh, we don't know why this happened." The God of Israel, this is why I sent Assyria against you. This is why later on I sent Babylon against you. And this is why I sent Babylon against Assyria. So these things that come up and these spirits of wars and so forth, this is orchestrated by the Most High. He's the master of peace and the creator of war. So Israel is not polytheistic. Israel is monotheistic. You understand? So getting back now with Jeremiah and the kings in the timeline of the biblical timeline, right? We have it to where, brothers and sisters, it says, the words of Jeremiah, the son of Hezekiah of the priest. That means he was house of Aaron through his son Itamar, in this case, that were in Anatot in the land of Benjamin, to whom the word of Yah came in the days of Josiah, the son of Ammon, king of Judah, in the 13th year of his reign. It came also in the days of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, unto the end of the 11th year of Zedekiah, the son of Josiah, king of Judah. Now, let us remember, I'm going to ask you, please, family, I'm going to ask you to please remember, for timeline purposes, this name I'm circling, Jehoiakim. Please let's remember that as we go along. All right, we're going to find out why I'm saying that later. We read earlier inside of this book here, a secular book, but it's not wicked per se, all right, about the Assyrians and what happened with their internal strife and what caused these nations that they had rule over to regain their independence, all right? All right, so let's see. During this time, we notice the rise of Babylon as an empire and the fall of Assyria as one. Next slide. Jeremiah in the matter of the kings, part 2. Behold, I will send and take all the families of the north, saith Yah, and I will send unto Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, my servant, and will bring him against this land and against the inhabitants thereof, and against all these nations round about. And I will utterly destroy them and make them an astonishment and a hissing and a perpetual desolations. That is coming from Jeremiah chapter 25. The Most High is saying that he's given the world in their era, in their area, to the king of Babylon. Now the pit wherein Ishmael cast all the dead bodies of the men whom he had slain by the side of Gedaliah, which was that which Asa the king had made for fear of Baasha of Israel. The same Ishmael, the son of Netaniah, filled with them with that was slain. What am I pointing out? This comes from Jeremiah chapter 41. So you can look in your own time, read Jeremiah 25, read Jeremiah 41, all right? And you begin to see where his quotations are at. The thing in relation to what we're talking about is it mentions here Baasha, the king of Israel, and it mentions Asa, the king. Asa was the king of Judah. Baasha and Asa were not friends. One ruled in the northern kingdom, one in the southern kingdom, and they had war with each other. Don't you know that as your body is at war with itself is when other ailments can take advantage? So when the kingdom is against itself, other things were able to take advantage. When the North and the South fought in the United States, that's when a lot of black people ran south to the Seminole Indians of Florida. And then a lot of black people ran to the North to be part of the abolitionists in New York. My point, regardless of whom we're talking about, anything that's internal is always going to sit there and find itself a problem afterward. Be at peace with yourself. It prevents drama later on. By the time we see this here, Babylon is sent against Judah. They of Babylon had ruled over Assyria. Assyria falling in 612, 609 BCE. We see Judah later in Babylonian captivity in the era of 586 BCE. After people like Ezekiel was taken in 597 BCE. What are we talking about? All right, brothers and sisters. Assyria took Israel in 722 BCE. Assyria took Judah in 701 BCE. Assyria fell to Babylon in 612 to 609 BCE. Babylon took Judah in 597 BCE and in 586 BCE. So you had matters of Israel being defeated and matters of Judah being defeated. Now, we want to point out, as we mentioned, a regnal dating. And you see Isaiah begin to talk about in the era of X, Y, and Z king. Jeremiah began to talk about in the matter of X, Y, and Z king. So let's see what we're talking about here. Micah, in the matter of kings, Jeremiah mentioned of Micah. The word of the word of Yah that came to Micah, the Moreshites, in the days of Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah, which he saw concerning Samaria and Jerusalem. Now, Micah was a prophet, or Micah, right? And it says Ahaz and Hezekiah. Sorry, I don't want that to be there like that. Sorry about that in that matter. So it says, brothers and sisters, we want to use the laser pointer. Thank you for participating in the presentation. Right? And it says, Micah in the days of Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, the kings of Judah. Regnu reign, king matter, which he saw concerning Samaria, which was the capital of the northern kingdom, and Jerusalem, which was the capital of the southern kingdom. Okay? The original capital, correct me if I'm wrong, of the northern kingdom was Tirzah. But Ahab made Samaria later on the capital where he put his idols that Israel began to worship. Israel, stop being a whore. Stop being an ungrateful whore. Stop accepting the blessings from the Most High and then say, thank you, Yah, I'm done with you. Let me move on. That is what an unappreciative, whorish spirit is. I never asked you to do that for me. You just did it out the kindness of your heart. I'm going to give thanks to somebody else for what you did. You see what the Most High had happen to Israel. That kind of spirit, in Jeremiah chapter 3, it says Israel has a whore's forehead. They refuse to be ashamed. That kind of mentality, take the blessings, take the land, take the blessings, hey, we got some sovereignty. Hey, we even got a kingdom. Hey, we got riches. Hey, we got the strongest man, Samson, the wisest man, Solomon. We got the most meekest man, Moses. And all of that, you still did not sit there and see your blessing. You gave it to credit to somebody else. And then had the attitude like a selfish, whorish mindset, basically saying, thank you for what you did for me, but I never did ask you for it. But I'm going to take it, and I'm going to keep on expecting it. Because that's just you. You just got the nice heart. The Most High's heart turned against Israel. Like he said in Jeremiah 15, my mind cannot be toward this people. Cast them forth. What will happen to them? The dogs, the captivity, the sword, and the famine. Let them go forth. That's in Jeremiah 15. See, you don't want to accept good. And on a human level, like the brother Mor Yitzhak said in Shomrei Habrit, there's always that other side. That we don't want to see from our brothers and sisters, and we certainly do not want to see it from the Most High. You understand? So now, it says this in Jeremiah. Micah the Moreshite prophesied in the days of Hezekiah, king of Judah, and he spoke to all the people of Judah, saying, thus saith the Lord of hosts, Zion shall be plowed as a field, and Jerusalem shall become heaps, and the mountain of the house as the high places of a forest. I saw a forest when I was in North Carolina. It's a big, big place. The big forest. You don't want that to have to be your home. We're not animals, so we shouldn't have to live in a forest. So what the Most High is saying through Micah, and then later on, Jeremiah cited Micah. What is the point of me mentioning that in this slide? Is because like Israel had a regnal dating system, the prophets coincided with each other. The prophets coincided with each other. It wasn't the word of Yah according to, or the prophecy according to, it was the word of Yah too. not according to. So these are things we want to point out for reference purposes, brothers and sisters. All right. So let's go on and continue with the slide. And it goes here. The matter with Nahum and the kings. The burden of Nineveh, which is the capital of Assyria. The book of the vision of Nahum, the Elkoshite. Now, when you read, brothers and sisters, about Micah, the Morashite, and Nahum, the Elkoshite, these are people whose lands is what they named after. Like people say Brooklynite. All right. These people, Micah was an Israelite, Nahum was an Israelite. We just want to point that out. It says, thy shepherds slumber, O king of Assyria. Thy worthies are at west. Thy people are scattered upon the mountains, and there is none to gather them. This is talking about the fall of Assyria. The kings of Assyria that are important to Israel are Tiglath-Pileser, Shalmaneser, Sargon, Sennacherib, and Esarhaddon. Now, Tiglath-Pileser is mentioned in the book of Kings, chapter 16. Shalmaneser is mentioned in the book of Kings, chapter 18. Sargon is mentioned in the book of Isaiah, chapter 20. We read that earlier. Sennacherib is mentioned in the book of Kings, also in chapter 18. And Esarhaddon is mentioned in the book of Chronicles, chapter 30, all the way to chapter 33. Brothers and sisters, these kings of Assyria spoke of the Israelites. The Israelites spoke of these kings of Assyria. So the time frame and the timeline that we're talking about coincides one with each other when we're getting into this. Next slide. Oh, the last king of Assyria was Ashurbanipal II, and this is when Assyria fell to Babylon. Babylon fell during the time when Josiah was ruling. This correlates to the time frame of Dynasty 26 of Egypt. Now, when we read in our own time in 2 Kings chapter 17, so king of Egypt was Shabaka, a Cushite / Nubian king that was ruling, brothers and sisters, inside of Egypt. So all of these different things is all correlating one with each other in the time frame. This is what we want to talk about and conclude out. Let's go on. Ezekiel in the matter of the kings. Now it came to pass in the 30th year, in the 4th month, in the 5th day of the month, as I was among the captives by the river Chebar, that the heavens were open, and I saw visions of Elohim. In the 5th day of the month, which was the 5th year of King Jehoiakim's captivity, the word of Yah came expressly unto Ezekiel the priest, the son of Buzi, in the land of the Chaldeans by the river Chebar, and the hand of Yah was there upon him. What, brothers and sisters, can be pointed out? What, brothers and sisters, can be noted in that particular case, if we will? That Ezekiel was a captive, brothers and sisters, inside of the Babylonian captivity. During the era of Jehoiachin. Jehoiachin is the grandson of whom Josiah. See, Josiah had sons. Mattaniah became known as Zedekiah. He had Jehoiakim. He also had Jehoiahaz. Jehoiahaz ruled only like 2 to 3 months. All right? When you go into the book of 2 Kings. Jehoiachin that we see here is the son of Jehoiakim. He was a king that ruled being 18 years old at the time. And he submitted himself as a servant to the king of Babylon. And that was partly due to the wickedness of what the house of Israel has done. See, this is not always to we're not quote unquote anti-Semitic or anything like that. But if you're not claiming the history of Israel and claiming that part too, then you can't claim the history of Israel. You can't do that. So these are things we just want to point out for edification purposes. Again, the timeline of Ezekiel is known by the rule of a king and how that timeline was done. So regnal dating, you're not going to find Ezekiel saying, in, brothers and sisters, the 6th century BCE. You're not going to find that in that. So this is what we want to point out in that case. Let's go on here. All right. Now, this is coming from the book of Ezekiel, chapter 37. Now, talking about prophecy and future and regnal dating, let's see what the Most High said of the history of Israel. And it says this: And I will make them one nation in the land upon the mountains of Israel, and one king shall be king to them all, and they shall be no more two nations, meaning like northern and southern kingdom. Neither shall they be divided into two kingdoms anymore. And my servant David shall be king over them. Who is it? My servant David. So, brothers and sisters, though David himself has passed away, we're talking about, just as it says, the house of Israel, but Jacob, who was named Israel, passed away. David himself was still known as the house of David, because you are what your father is. Bain is son, Bat is daughter. Bain is son, Bat is daughter. Bain, Bana, to build. Bayit house. With a Bain and a Bat, you are Bone a Bayit. With a Bain and a Bat, Atah Bone Bayit, you are building a house with a son and a daughter. So Hebraic linguistics, looking at it, say like that. When it says my servant David, it's talking about from the seed line of David. So they never had to wonder in the Old Testament who was going to be the ruling Mashiach. That never was a concern in the eyes of the people. The book of Lamentations, 5 verse 20 and 21, says, renew our days as of old. Brothers and sisters, the time frame of Ezekiel, from King David to Ezekiel, is over 400 years. From David's rule to the time of the prophet Ezekiel is over 400 years. So when it says about renew our days as of old while they were captive in Babylon, what do you think they're talking about? They didn't look per se, we're going to sit here and just look to see who will be the anointed king to come. Because the book already tells us in Ezekiel what's going to happen. And this is Ezekiel chapter 37 for those who care to read it. Next slide, please. Daniel and the matter of kings in Jeremiah, mentioned by Daniel. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah. Remember I asked you all earlier to remember Jehoiakim? This is why. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, with part of the vessels of the house of Elohim. And he carried them into the land of Shinar, into the house of his God, and the vessels he brought into the treasure house of his God. That's in Daniel chapter 1. Again, a matter of a regnal dating according to a king's timeline is how this is known. Let's go on. Daniel chapter 9 goes on to say this. In the 1st year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus of the seed of the Medes, who was made king over the realm of the Chaldeans. So let's look at this right here. Isaiah was prophesying while Assyria was still in rule. Jeremiah saw the fall of Assyria to Babylon, and Daniel later on saw the fall of Babylon to Persia. So when we start talking about biblical timeline, we could begin to see what we're talking about. In the 1st year of his reign, I, Daniel, meditated in the books over the number of years, whereof the word of Yah came to Jeremiah the prophet, that he would accomplish for the desolation of Jerusalem 70 years. Brothers and sisters, what are we pointing out real quick, right? Jeremiah mentioned a prophet before him, Micah. Daniel, a prophet after Jeremiah, mentioned Jeremiah. Do we see how the book correlates in timeline with each other and then still shows the history of the world? Let's go on, if we will, to the next part, please. Ezra and the matter of the kings, as we close out. Now in the 1st year of Cyrus, king of Persia, that the word of Yah by the mouth of Jeremiah might be accomplished, Yah stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, that he made a proclamation throughout all his kingdom and put it in writing also, saying, so brothers and sisters, be it the regnal reigns of the kings of Israel or Judah or King Cyrus of Persia, ancient nations had a calendar according to who was ruling. Let's go on. Haggai and the matter of kings. In the 2nd year of Darius the king, in the 6th month, in the 1st day of the month, came the word of Yah by Haggai the son of Haggai the prophet, unto Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, governor of Judah. and to Joshua, the son of Jehozadak, the high priest, saying, Haggai is only 2 chapters in the Bible. This is after Daniel. So we can see as the biblical timeline goes on and on, brothers and sisters, it's still by the king such and such, this king such and such, this king such and such. So you're not going to find him saying, I am Haggai, and this is in the 5th century BCE or the 6th century BCE. You're not going to find him saying that. He, like the predecessors before him, or the people who were his predecessors, that is, because precede means before, brothers and sisters, they dealt with a regnal dating, as we're going to point out and close out. All right, Zephaniah and the matter of the kings. The word of Yah came unto Zephaniah, the son of Cushi, the son of Gedaliah, the son of Amariah, the son of Hezekiah, in the days of Josiah, son of Ammon, king of Judah. So already Zephaniah and Jeremiah were prophets in the same era, because they know the time frame, because they both prophesied in the era of Josiah. Zephaniah and Jeremiah were prophets at the same era in the same time, because the timeline is known by the list of the kings. That's why regnal dating and understanding that is important when dealing with these dates. From beyond the rivers of Ethiopia shall they bring my suppliance, even the daughter of mine disperses my offering. We already went over that and what that's talking about, or numerous things about the diaspora of Israel. This being the last slide here. In the 8th month, in the 2nd year of Darius, came the word of Yah unto Zechariah, the son of Berechiah, the son of Edo, the prophet, saying, and it came to pass in the 4th year of King Darius, that the word of Yah came unto Zechariah in the 4th day of the 9th month, even in Kislev. Kislev, brothers and sisters, and I pronounce it as that, not with the V, because it ends with the letter Y, is the same month, centuries later, that Judas Maccabeus and the Israelites defeated brothers and sisters Antiochus Epiphanes. But getting back to this, do we still see in Zechariah as well as Haggai, after there was no king in Israel or Judah, that they still did regnal dating according to their timeline? By citing even Persian kings, well, this king was doing this at this time is when I began to prophesy. So again, you're not going to find I did this in the 4th century, in the 5th century, in the 6th century BCE. You're going to find a regnal dating. And closing out with this. This is the message that we need to also understand in this. Thus hath the Lord of hosts spoken, saying, execute true judgment and show mercy and compassion every man to his brother, and oppress not the widow, nor the fatherless, the stranger, nor the poor, and let none of you devise evil against his brother in your hearts. That is what the prophet was telling the people. Devise not evil in your heart. These dates mean nothing in comparison. The history means nothing if you don't have a heart of love for your brothers and sisters. If you have a divisive, evil heart for wickedness, you no different than the wicked kings of Israel or Judah. Because the time things that they left on record in their days and era is an error, is a shagaga, is a mistake, is a kata'ah, is a sin, is an awon, is an iniquity, is a pigul, is an astonishment or an wicked thing, is a to'eba, an abomination. These dates mean absolutely nothing in comparison. When we read, oppress not the widow, don't be on it like some brothers do, trying to befriend a woman, never promising her marriage, have no intentions of it, but knowing she wants somebody around for her son or daughter, and you a good father figure, and he, like Bob Marley said, don't open a woman's heart unless you're ready for it. There are men who do that, and it's in the ancient days, in the era of such and such king. That's wickedness. You don't do stuff like that. Nor the fatherless. The pimps deal with daughters who are fatherless. 15, 16-year-old girls, because they sit there and feel you ain't got no father, I could be your father and your sugar daddy and all of that. The stranger, we're supposed to love the stranger. We don't love the enemy, but we love the stranger. There's a difference. nor the poor. Don't sit there and think because a person is poor in spirit or poor in mind or poor financially or economically or socially that you can be a bully. And let none of you devise evil against his brother in your heart. That was the same thing Zechariah said, that Amos said, that Isaiah said, that Jeremiah and Ezekiel said. For over 400 or 500 years, the prophets was coming with the same message to the same house of Israel. Regardless of whether Persia, Babylon, or Assyria had hegemony over the then known world. And with that, I say, Todah for the time, giving honor and praise unto the Most High. That's in Zechariah chapter 7, by the way. Giving honor and praise unto the Most High, the creator and the maker of heaven and earth. Thank you for the time. I apologize. There is no Hebrew class today. We're going to postpone it to tomorrow, and if not tomorrow, into the future because of situations, nothing bad, but just of situations. And I ask you to subscribe to the channel, like, comment, and I can be reached as you see the number there, 908-587-4841. With that, brothers and sisters, I say again, giving honor and praise unto Yah. Thank you, Sarah Michaela of the House of Israel, my lady. Thank you, Bat Yisrael. Thank you, Captain Yehu Ben Levi. Thank you. I'm trying to get to all the other names. Looking Up in Jamaica and everyone else. Uziel Yisrael. Thank you too, my brother. And brothers and sisters, again, I do ask you all to subscribe to the channel and share it. All right? Shalom.